For newer players, playing as the Ottoman Empire can sometimes be, how shall we say, a little daunting. Maybe it's because their units are so different from the other nations, the European nations. Whatever the case, it's definitely a different, I can't even speak, different playthrough. When you start the campaign, you don't necessarily get some of the best units to choose from like some of the other nations do. Yes, it can be a little aggravating, to say the least. No! Even still, could it be that the Ottomans have what could be the most interesting and fun campaign in Empire Total War? David, you crazy man, what are you thinking, you might say? Well, let me pitch the argument here and now. Let's get to it. And let's just state for the record, it's not because of their mustaches or their goatees or even, whatever hairstyles they might partake of using. And heck, I'm even gonna go so far as to say it's not from their swaying and their unique dancing ability that they may have, because the Hayat Irregulars, they definitely got it going on here. It's none of those things, I promise you. But you do have to admit, with moves like that, they could probably pick up any woman. Anyways, let's move on. And if you haven't guessed, it is David with Faramir's Rangers. If you happen to be a returning Ranger, welcome back. If you are new to the channel, join those Faramir's Rangers. It is free after all. It is pure madness and craziness that you're in for. Okay, so starting out as the Ottomans, you got a couple of problems. You're not going to have access to recruit a lot of good quality units in very many places. So you have to build up barracks and get them going to where you can start being able to recruit some of these better units. And then the other problem is the cost of some of them is quite expensive as the Ottomans. Even the Israelis for a militia unit are more expensive than the European counterpart militia. So your costs are going to be quite high, but you can get good units once you build up your barracks, like the Kurdish hillmen and so on and so forth. And then over in Armenia, you'll be able to recruit a fabulous unit, a bow unit, believe it or not, Armenian archers. But all this takes work. I mean, to build the the governor's residence takes 3 turns, so you're not going to have immediate access to starting to recruit some of these units. So it's going to take some time and patience to get there. But once you do, I'm going to show you some builds that you can make that can be quite useful and not as expensive, that won't bankrupt your economy very quickly as it is easy to do with the Ottomans' expensive units. So some of the things I like to do with my Ottoman builds is to use the cement janissaries as my primary infantry weapon. Why? Because they are probably the most cost-effective unit that you can have as the Ottomans. Tailing in as 190 upkeep cost. It's not bad. The recruitment cost is not backbreaking, to say the least. So right off, I'll start recruiting 3 of these guys. That way you can get going. But that's the problem as the Ottomans. You can only recruit 3, and you have to recruit them at Istanbul. So you have to get them there and spread them out. The other thing you want to do, turn 1, is start building up Armenia to its next government building. That way you can start recruiting Armenian archers. Now, if you decide to start building up Mesopotamia, the problem is that the Persians are going to come after that, so you're not going to have immediate access to the Kurdish hillmen, which is kind of sad, because it's a risk to build that up. You're spending a lot of money to build up Baghdad, and you're not always going to get a return on that investment. So I oftentimes wait on getting Kurdish hillmen, and I build up my cement janissaries and Armenian archer style armies and then I work towards getting back to Baghdad if I end up losing it, and take that. And then once you get Kurdish hillmen, you can really be in a place of strength. Let me stress again, even still, once you get Armenian archers and your Kurdish hillmen, you're still going to want to make sure the backbone of your army is Cement Janissaries. These guys are going to allow you to have a cost-effective army. So you're going to be in the melee business, my friends. But this is what makes the Armenian archers so important, because they can shoot bows over your men without killing a lot of your men in friendly fire. This is crucial, because with melee, if you have rifle firing units, you're going to cause a lot of friendly fire. Now, it's not to say you won't get some with bows, but it's going to be reduced tremendously. Now, you can see here from the siege battle that I'm doing without using artillery. I'm defending my fortress, and how am I doing it? I'm allowing the enemy to come into the fort, and I am using my Cement Janissaries to flank around, come in behind them, and hit them from multiple sides, causing morale drops, and then routing them completely. And that's exactly how I did it outside the fort as well. The Cement Janissaries have a pretty decent charge bonus and attack. Now, in defense, not so much, so you want to use them on the attack. And this is key. And then you utilize your bowmen as using to anti-cav, because also Armenian archers can lay stakes. But again, using the Armenian archers to shoot on top of walls and over hills and obstacles that you can't shoot with muskets is absolutely amazing, especially with a lot of the terrain you're going to be fighting in. Again, I think you'll find that the Ottomans, teaming them with some of the better quality units, even once you get into the mid game, when you start getting Beylik units and such forth, you can use some of those more expensive units teamed up with, just maybe 2 Beyliks or 3, maybe even 4 as a center force, Cement Janissaries as a flanking force. You'll find that your army will be quite powerful. It's about using your units in tandem with each other, because they have very unique skill sets that can be utilized at the highest of advantage. And you can see here, teaming up Cement Janissaries with the Armenian archers can be quite deadly to these line infantry, peppering them with bows and then going in and giving them that final shock in the rear. That doesn't even sound right, but once you hit them, you're causing all these morale drops, and it's just beautiful to behold. Again, you'll have to find the sweet spot for your economy. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Myself, I only use 2 Beyliks, 4 at tops, once I get to the mid-level game. I don't like to use too many elite units. Now, so far, we've only really talked about infantry, and we still have to talk about cav. But hold your horses here just a minute. We're going to discuss the cost, and then we're going to get into cav, because it's all going to kind of wrap itself up in a nice, beautiful, pretty little bow. Let's talk about that now. So most of you might be familiar, obviously, with playing European nations, and you notice that the cost of getting these units is going to be quite different from the cost of getting the Ottoman units. The European militia is only 170 versus the Ottoman equivalent is 190, which is the Israeli. Then you're talking line infantry. Your costs are going to be quite different there as well, as you're only going to have 1 basic line infantry. And then your cav especially is going to be far cheaper as a European nation than you will with the Ottomans. But there's a couple cav units that you will have access to that you can use quite effectively to keep your costs down. And we're going to discuss that now. So as we dive into the cav of the Ottomans and the costs, there's not very many cav units you're going to have access to recruiting unless you want to get camel nomads, and I think they're a complete waste. Your first great cav that you're going to have access to is Delhi horsemen, but you got to research up to that point. You're not just going to be able to get to it. Then you can get Mamelukes if you take Georgia. So the problem with Mamelukes is they're quite expensive. You're over $300. Now the Tartars are a great option, and you can get those in Armenia and in Georgia once you take those regions. And you're talking, this is a unit that's under $200 for a cav. Now the morale is quite low, but it does have bow shooting capability, mounted firing, and the reload is better than what the 15 shows because it's a bow. It's a different story. But again, it could be a great unit because it's not a unit you're going to throw in a ton of melee except to run down fleeing units, which is quite important. But it's a great unit to give you mobility to your army, be anti-cav, which bow cav is great at being. So basically what I'm saying is you can use Tartar and other bow cav as an effective force to give yourself mobility and to keep your costs down, and only have maybe 1 or 2 deli cav in an army and fill the other cav needs out with those bow cav. Maybe even only have 1 deli cav. Deli cav is a great unit to have, but again, for only being 45 man and only having 10 ammunition, it is a quite expensive unit to put too many in your army. So to kind of wrap this up, the army builds that I like to use that give me the most effectiveness, and you can kind of substitute units here and there. Again, I don't use artillery too much. I do use it from time to time, but I find my aggressiveness does not always do well with artillery. So all you have to do is substitute artillery in your builds, and there you go. Anyways, my build is for the Middle Eastern region. I like to use a General's Bodyguard, 3 Tartars, a Deli Cav, 4 Kurdish Hillmen, 2 Armenian Archers, and 9 Cement Janissaries. I find this army to be quite effective. I spread out my Kurdish Hillmen and my Archers in the center. They are quite capable of handling any cav that might come and attack them. They're great anti-cav units. And also, you have the mobility with your Tartars and your Deli Cav to support anywhere on the battlefield for any advances that the cav makes towards your units. Then on the flanks, I put my Cement Janissaries because, again, I use my Kurdish Hillmen and Archers to spread out their line, coming around on either flanks, the Cement Janissaries, and trying to surround them and break them in entirety. And I find that to be a quite useful build. Now, in the European theater, I use a General's Bodyguard, 2 Hayat regulars, 2 Archers, 2 Tartars, a Deli Cav, 2 Beylik Janissaries, and 10 Cement Janissaries. Now, it's very similar. Again, with the 2 Beylik Janissaries, they're not rank firing units, so you have to spread them completely thin. But this works with my strategy with the Hayat irregulars, the Beyliks spreading out to face the front of the enemy, and then the Archers as support, and then my Cement Janissaries to attack the flanks and come in from behind. And again, using Cav to support my push. These builds could be extremely effective, and you can find that you can defeat several armies. Now, the key is always going to be with the melee army is to make sure that you rest your melee troops between engagements, because they will tire, and once they tire out, they can become completely ineffective. This is where your Kurdish Hillmen, your Bowmen, your Cav, your Beylik Janissaries, this is where they come in super great effect. You bring your melee units behind after an engagement, let them rest a little bit, use your ranged fire units to hold the enemy back, and then you pour in your Cement Janissaries again once they have rested up for their next melee push. Anyways, I hope you did enjoy this little extra tidbit video on the Ottoman Empire. I felt like my video on the units was just lacking, and I had a lot more to say. I hope you did enjoy this. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on the video, and let me know in the description below, what are your strategies you like to use, what you find to be most effective using the Ottomans. I'm sure there's many of you out there, probably some that have way better strategies than I do. Anyways, this is David with Faramir's Rangers. We'll see you on the next one.